Hello seniors and all other LSA students, parents, and faculty watching this video. Your class, the class of 2017, are one of the few classes that I have ever felt a strong connection to over the course of my career, and I wanted one more opportunity to talk to you before I left. I couldn't do it at graduation since there was already speakers lined up, so I figured this would be the best method. Thank you to John Newland for the filming of this video. The idea of this speech came to me actually several years ago, and your graduation gave me the impetus to actually write it down. I hope you enjoy it and learn something from it. It's titled, "Everything I Need to Know I Learned from the President of the United States." And in this, I have chosen to try and pick one thing or a couple of things that we could learn from every single man who has served as president. And we're going to start with the first. We're going to start with George Washington. The first thing we should learn from him is to always give up power. He gave up power multiple times in his career, from the Continental Army to only serving 2 terms as president. But the other thing that we should learn from him is to do what is right, even if it's on your deathbed. He was the only founding father to actually recognize that slavery was evil and then give it up, even if it was only on his deathbed. From John Adams, we can learn that we should never silence our critics. It never works. We see that in his passing of the Sedition Acts. It never silenced them, and it only got him a bad reputation in U.S. history. So listen to them, don't silence them. From Thomas Jefferson, we can learn that you need to be flexible with your principles. While a strict constructionist, Jefferson also realized that to expand the United States on his principles, he needed the Louisiana Purchase, and he found a way to work his principles into that, as well as stay out of debt. The man died penniless from trying to expand Monticello, his home, to fit into his vision, but it left him and his family in debt upon his death. From James Madison, we learned that even the quietest voices can have the largest impact on the world. James Madison was seen as meek, small, and quiet, often being told many times to speak up at the Constitutional Convention. But with that, he's the one who brought us the Constitution as we see it here today. From James Monroe, when you realize you have a problem, solve it. Don't delay it. He recognized very early on that slavery was a problem in when he was president, but he's the one who signed the Missouri Compromise that extended it even further. From John Quincy Adams, we learned to don't make deals that you're not willing to pay the price for. He made a deal with Henry Clay to be elected president after a disastrous 1824 election, and it cost him by only serving 1 term in a Congress that was not willing to work with him. From Andrew Jackson, we should learn to stand with our friends like he did with Peggy Eaton and her husband, even though she was a divorcee in that time. But also we should learn to stand up for the people who can't stand up for themselves. Even though this is an anti-lesson, we should learn from Jackson, because he didn't stand up for the Native Americans through the Trail of Tears. From Martin Van Buren, we should learn that unquestioning support of our friends can really hurt you at times. It was the economic turmoil caused by his friend and President Andrew Jackson that led him to be kicked out of office after just 4 short years in office. From William Henry Harrison, wear a coat out when it rains. He spoke for 2 hours in the rain at his inauguration and died 30 days later. From John Tyler, we should learn to be ready for authority when it comes and be decisive. When he became president after the death of William Henry Harrison, he took power and he wielded it without question. And he also was decisive in the annexation of Texas and adding that land to our country. From John K. Polk, we should learn to set reasonable and achievable goals, then work your butt off to get it done. He served 1 term in office, had 4 goals, and he achieved all of them within that short term. From Zachary Taylor, we should understand that bad circumstances often dictate our fate, but that we should work for the good in those circumstances. He dealt with the circumstances of the Compromise of 1850, of Texas and California both wanting to enter, and he was able to at least get some kind of compromise in that. From Millard Fillmore, we should learn to be your own man. He stood up to President Taylor as vice president over the Compromise of 1850 because he felt it was the right thing to do. Felt it would just bring more conflict to the United States. From Franklin Pierce, we should learn that we should respond to problems before they get out of control. And those problems that he should have responded to was bleeding Kansas, the violence that was in Kansas during its attempt to become a state. From James Buchanan, we should learn to be consistent. He sent troops both to Utah and to Virginia to deal with threats to federal authority, but neglected to do so when South Carolina seceded from the Union in 1860. From Abraham Lincoln, only say what is necessary and no more. We can see this in his Gettysburg Address, the shortest speech of that ceremony, and yet it's the one that's most remembered. but also be willing to change your mind when you realize your mistakes. He realized that the Union could only be saved by getting rid of slavery, and for that reason, he authorized and he supported the passage of the 13th Amendment. From Andrew Johnson, again, be consistent. He did not want Lincoln to be hard on the Southern, or to be easy on the Southerners who seceded, yet when he became president, he went soft on them just as much. From Ulysses S. Grant, if you plan to fail, or you fail to plan, you plan to fail. The lack of a plan from his administration and his hands-off approach led to many scandals that he was plagued with throughout his 2 terms in office. From Rutherford B. Hayes, you need to develop a thick skin against personal attacks. Due to the situation of his election, he was often called Rutherford B. Hayes, but he didn't let it get to him. From James Garfield, don't tick off crazy people, they just might kill you. And that's what happened when he was assassinated. He ticked off someone who wanted a job, and they were legitimately crazy. From Chester A. Arthur, surround yourself with the best people, not just your friends. And he advocated for the reform of the federal bureaucracy to make sure that civil service, the people who enforce our laws, are based on merit, not because they know the president. From Grover Cleveland, we should learn that sometimes you will tick off your supporters by standing on your principles. And he vetoed many bills in Congress, even though, because he was trying to support his principles, and it got many people in Congress were not on his side because of it. From Benjamin Harrison, hold people responsible. He was president during the Wounded Knee Massacre in the 1890s, and he held the commanders who killed innocent Native Americans responsible for those crimes. From William McKinley, again, don't tick off crazy people. They might kill you. His assassination was the same as James Garfield. From Theodore Roosevelt, we should learn to respect and protect nature. He was one of the first presidents to value conservation efforts in the United States and set aside our first national parks for just the beauty of the landscape. From William Howard Taft, haters are going to hate. He did more than Roosevelt did in his term, but still was ran against after his first term in office. Just do what you're going to do, and don't listen to the haters there. From Woodrow Wilson, when leaders don't listen to what is right, take it to the people, and that's what he did with the Treaty of Versailles to try and avoid a Second World War. To avoid that, he took it to the people. But also, strive for peace. That was his whole point with the 14 points and the League of Nations and all the things that came out of World War I. We should be striving for peace. From William Harding, we need to be ahead of our time. He pushed against the segregation of the South 30 years before it became an issue in the civil rights movement. From Calvin Coolidge, we learned that sunshine is the best disinfectant. He held press conferences so that people would know what the president was doing, but also he fired those involved in the scandals of the Harding administration. From Herbert Hoover, we should learn to treat others as you would like to be treated. We can see this in the Moots-Harley tariff. He passed a tariff that taxed goods from other countries, and then other countries taxed us, which worsened even the Great Depression. From Franklin Delano Roosevelt, we should learn that patience is rewarded. He tried to get the courts to do what he wanted in the New Deal, and he failed. So he tried to put more judges on the court, and he got the people ticked off about that. But if he had just waited, they finally started to go with the New Deal, and in the course of his 3 terms, I know he was elected to 4, but in the 3 terms he actually served, he was able to replace 8 judges on the Supreme Court who supported his ideas. From Harry S. Truman, we should learn that a degree is just a piece of paper, not a guarantee of success. Truman was the most recent modern president to be president without a college degree. That degree that you're getting right now is important, but it's not going to determine your job. It's not going to determine your success in life. From Dwight D. Eisenhower, take responsibility for your failures. At D-Day, he had 2 letters, one for success, if they succeeded, and one if they had failed, willing to hold himself responsible and resign his post as Supreme Allied Commander. But also learn from your adversaries. He instituted the interstate highway system that we still use today, mostly from his observations of the Autobahn in Germany. From John F. Kennedy, we should learn to aim high and reach for the stars for his guidance in the starting of the space race. From Lyndon B. Johnson, we can learn that we cannot invest in both guns and butter. We cannot prepare for war and try to help individuals at the same time. It's hard and difficult, and we should choose one. From Richard M. Nixon, don't hide from the truth. While he is not responsible for the Watergate break-in, he did hide it, and that's what got him in trouble. From Gerald Ford, forgive and pardon even if you're hated for it. which is what he did when Richard Nixon resigned, is he pardoned to attempt us to move on, but he was hated for it. From Jimmy Carter, work for peace between enemies. Between Egypt and Israel, he signed the Camp David Accords, which brought peace to those countries. From Ronald Reagan, switch sides if they don't represent you anymore. He was a New Deal Democrat when he was younger, and he realized the party no longer supported his positions, so he switched sides to the Republicans. From George H.W. Bush, don't make promises you can't keep. He talked about not having new taxes and then passed them. From Bill Clinton, learn to work with those you disagree with, and you can accomplish much. 2 years into office, he was forced to work with the opposite party, the Republicans, and they passed welfare reform and tax reform in that time period. And they're actually going to work on other reforms, but due to his other thing we should learn from him, he was not able to. By focusing on yourself and your own needs, it usually just gets you in trouble, and we can see that through his the scandal he had with Monica Lewinsky. From George W. Bush, confront evil. Terrorism is evil. We can all agree with that. We can see that in what happened just a couple of days ago, yesterday in London. We need to confront it wherever we see it. From Barack Obama, don't let an experience allow you to pass a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He had an opportunity to run for president at the time and saw that it was a great opportunity, and he took it, and it worked out to his success. But also, massive change cannot be seen in one generation. We can see that in the Affordable Care Act. He wanted to try and change something, he attempted it, but now we see it even still being challenged today. And from Donald Trump, as my students in government will like, don't make bets unless you're willing to pay up. I was supposed to have a hat here that said Trump, make America great, because that's what I said I would do, because I made the bet that Donald Trump would not be president. But let's go back to George Washington. Because we are a Christian school, what's some application we can take from this? The two most important lessons for us as Christians, I believe, come from George Washington, my favorite president. The first is Christianity and our faith is not about power. We see in 2 Corinthians, we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this surpassing power belongs to God and not us. And from 1 Corinthians, but God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. And from 2 Philippians, so if there is any encouragement in Christ, any comfort from love, any participation in ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you not look to his own interests, but also into the interests of others. Have this mind amongst yourself, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who thought he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God something to be grasped. But he emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore God has highly exalted him and bestowed him on him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is the Lord, to the glory of God the Father. It's not about power. God's power is what we have there. So if Christianity is not about power, what is it about? First, it's about forgiveness. Jesus said on the cross to forgive us because we did not know what to do. He told the disciples to forgive 7 times 70, or as many times as necessary. He forgave Peter for his denial of him at the trial. And God forgave the people of Israel over and over again, and we can see that in the New Testament, or in the Old Testament. Also that our life is, if it's not about power, it's about service to others. We can see in Jesus' parable on the sheep and the goats that those who served other people were rewarded. Doing things because we should not lead our brothers astray. Apostle Paul told us if that eating the meat of sacrifice to idols caused his brothers to sin, we shouldn't do it. Jesus shows this example of servanthood by washing his disciples' feet at the Last Supper, and then also is showing us that the greatest in the kingdom of heaven is actually the least. And the last thing that we can learn from President Washington in this Christian school is that you should stand for what you believe, even upon your death. American Christians are comfortable because we don't face active persecution like they do in other places in the world. Christians suffer and die every day for our faith. And this world, when you go off to college and other places, will challenge your faith and your belief every day. Love them, forgive them, and serve them anyway. Explore your faith, know it. Our faith, one of the best things we have is that our faith is one of the most historically reliable. It takes faith to believe that God caused the walls of Jericho to fall, or that Jesus actually rose from the dead. But historically, we know the walls of Jericho fell, and they fell the way the Bible said. And there hasn't been any historical evidence to show where the body of Jesus was in 2,000 years. And if the Bible doesn't make sense, seek out answers from trusted sources, from your pastors and from prayer. Stand up for your faith, and Jesus stands for you. This is not easy, but the reward is worth it in our crown of life. There's one more thing I need to say before I sign off and I say goodbye. I am no longer a teacher here at LSA. Late this school year, due to failing enrollment numbers, the Board of Education determined that the high school was overstaffed. For those reasons, I was released from my job at the Lutheran School Association through a reduction of force. I'm sorry you were not told about this sooner. I was only informed of my release on Friday, May 5th after school. I made the decision at that point to keep this information mostly to myself and not share it with any students. I did this because I did not want to take any focus away from you and your graduation. I know this means some of you did not get to say your goodbyes, but that is the decision I made, and I pray you can forgive me for that decision. On a positive note, God works in truly awesome ways. A few weeks before my release, a former high school principal, the man who brought me to Las Vegas, the man who has had the largest impact on the course of my career, Glenn Rollins, the principal of Lutheran High School in Springfield, asked me if I would be interested in a position at his school. Initially, I turned him down, not wanting to leave my position at LSA. The Monday after I was told about my release, he sent me an email that stated he was still very interested in hiring me to come on board as a member of his faculty. After conversations with my wife, we started the process of calling me to be a social studies teacher at their school. And on Monday, May 22nd, I was officially called by the Board of Education to serve in that capacity. This is good for several reasons. First, I will get to stay in Central Illinois, where we have built a life and a community. I will probably see some of you during athletic events that we share with Lou High over the course of the next several years. Don't hesitate to come over and say hello if and when you see me. Secondly, I will be at the forefront of building another AP program at another school. Thirdly, and I think this is the most important, it shows that God was at work before our very eyes. He provided me with the means of a position before He even knew I needed it. God is truly good. If you feel the need to say goodbye, I will still be around. I'll be at school all this week for meetings and cleaning out my room. If you want to say goodbye, don't hesitate to stop by. Also, you can email me, ajbulova@gmail.com, or text me, 217-412-8185, or send me a message on Facebook. I'll accept those friend requests now. Again, I'm sorry I sprung it on you, but I felt you needed to know. It's been fun. I will miss LSA and what it has done for my career and getting to know all of you. I wish you all the best of luck and pray that you all find success in your lives. Thank you for the impact you have made in my life. I love you guys. Goodbye.